BunkaMania. BunkaMania? BunkaMania goes to the movies. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. I'm, of course, the Dekker Dane, and joining me today is Harriett, aka Manga Girl. Harriett, how are you doing?
Not too bad. Very good. I like that introduction there. Very clever.
Very good. Good. Yes. Wordplay. And it's all to do with the film we're talking about today. And I hope you're ready for a discussion of the undead, because we're going into ghouly territory here with today's film. Of course, we are talking about Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. But before we begin, if you enjoy the show, do give us a thumbs up on YouTube. And if you want to have fresh new content of BunkaMania Goes to the Movies fresh to your YouTube feed, hit the subscribe button. It's completely free to do so. So without further ado, let's talk about the movie of the moment here on the show, Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice Beetlejuice is the sequel to the cult 1988 horror comedy, with Michael Keaton once again becoming the ghost with the most, along with original cast members Winona Ryder and Cahterine O'Hara. After an unexpected family tragedy, 3 generations of the Dietz family return home to Winter River. Still haunted by Beetlejuice, Lydia, played by Ryder, has her life turned upside down when her rebellious teenage daughter Astrid, played by Jenna Ortega, discovers the mysterious model of the town in the attic, and the portal to the afterlife is accidentally opened. With trouble brewing in both realms, it's only a matter of time until someone says Beetlejuice's name 3 times, and the mischievous demon returns to unleash his very own brand of mayhem. The film also stars Monica Bellucci as Beetlejuice's soul-sucking ex-girlfriend who's looking for revenge, Willem Dafoe as an undead actor turned hardboiled detective. We've also got Arthur Conti as a bored teenager that Astrid bonds with, and Justin Theroux as Lydia's slimy producer and partner. So, before we begin, we're going to dive into non-spoiler territory. So, if you haven't seen the film, don't worry, we're not going to dive into any key details just now. We're going to have a little general talk about the film, give our general thoughts, give it a rating, and then if you have seen the film and you want to hear our thoughts about some of the spoiler stuff, then stick around. We'll get into the nitty-gritty as we go along. Right, so Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. It is, I'm astonished, it's nearly 40 years since the original.
Oh my god, when I looked at the first time, I was just like, oh, it did. Crumbles to dust, literally.
Yeah, I looked at it. I think it's roughly 36 years. It's definitely over 36 years now, because the original film came out in America in August of 1988. And I actually did rewatch it going into Beetlejuice Beetlejuice, because okay, let's get myself familiar with what the story is about, the character side of things. And I forgot how much I kind of really enjoyed the original, because it's a very quirky horror comedy. It's very, and this is Burton's, I believe this is Tim Burton's second film as a director. So this is like the early days of Tim Burton as the gothic visual storyteller that he is. Obviously, you see stuff in the Batman films, Nightmare Before Christmas, that sort of stuff. And obviously, at this point, I think this is way before Michael Keaton became Batman as well. So Michael Keaton kind of diving into his comedy chops still at this point in his career. And yeah, I had a blast with the original Beetlejuice. It's really fun. It is very kooky. It's very horror, and it's very gothic. And it's like, you get this sense of a real kind of unique world of the undead, and I kind of like that. Did you rewatch the original before we went into Beetlejuice Beetlejuice?
I did. I literally watched it the night before I went to see the second Beetlejuice movie, because, like yourself, I had wanted to familiarize myself with it, because it had been a long time since I watched it. Even the original I watched, there were bits cut out of it, and I was just like, wait a minute, I didn't see you in the original. Either that or I just completely forgot it. But I even delved into the cartoons as well. If you remember
Yes.
the cartoons,
Yes.
I started watching old clips of that, because I watched that before I watched the movie, I will say. So rewatching the cartoon, which is very mild compared to what it is, but it still has that kind of
It
element
is
of
very
horror, which
mild.
is good. It's a cartoon, it has to be.
It has to be very mild. But the fact is, with the cartoon's very. It's a different dynamic, because Beetlejuice isn't trying to marry Lydia. Lydia is
No.
pretty much a girl in high school, so they clearly take that bit of the story from the original out of the entire cartoon show, and probably for a very good reason. Because in the original, Beetlejuice is helping ghosts played by, I think, Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis try and get rid of the Dietz who have moved in, and they form a friendship with Winona Ryder's character. But then Beetlejuice kind of gets involved through shenanigans and is trying to kind of wed Ryder's character, and obviously Beetlejuice didn't necessarily win in the end. So, but it's probably fair to say Beetlejuice is not the heroic character. I think well, he's not even a heroic character in the cartoon show. He's more like a kind of a guy who just kind of gets out of trouble, gets into trouble, and somehow most times gets out of it, but usually comes off a little bit worse for wear. Whereas in the film, he's he's not a nice guy. He's very sketchy. He's slimy. He's despicable per se. And yeah, that's the Beetlejuice we have in well, we still have this Beetlejuice in Beetlejuice. But yeah, coming out of the original, coming into Beetlejuice, I think seeing the original is very important to seeing this one because I think some of the story beats and some of the family dynamic characters works a lot stronger if you have seen the original. I think if you've watched the original and you've never clicked with Beetlejuice, you're not going to enjoy this film. I'm just going to put it out there right now. This is probably more for the fans than anyone who's kind of curious about Beetlejuice. I think you'll probably get a kick out of the visual aesthetic because the gothic underworld again is wonderful. It's more realized with a bigger budget, and there's some really good set pieces in that. But yeah, I think I generally enjoyed this. I think it was good fun. I would say it's a good sequel. I wouldn't say it's a great sequel. It's clear some of the returning cast members are having a whale of a time. It's nice to see Michael Keaton back again as Beetlejuice. Winona Ryder has just fit right back in, and so does Cahterine O'Hara. They all just seem to be happy to be back together again. It's quite nice.
Yeah, totally agree. I think, like you said, it's not the best sequel, but it's a good sequel. I think it done the first
Yes.
movie proud, and I think you're right. You need to see the first one before you see the second one. I know I have seen people say, "Oh no, you don't have to," but no, 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 you really do because there'll be some things in there you need to know. Because if you listen to it, it's just going to
Yeah.
zoom past your head and like, what does that mean? And like for people who have watched it, it's like, oh, I get what they say, sort of thing. Yeah, they definitely had a lot more fun with this time. They kind
Mm.
of went with it. I mean, I've seen interviews of the cast saying they really enjoyed it. And it was nice to see characters kind of blossom up a bit more. So they had more time to shine in this case. And others, I mean, there was a lot, but it covered everything, which was good.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of things do develop and blossom as they would as the years go by. I mean, obviously we have the mother-daughter relationship between Lydia and her mother, Ryder and O'Hara, and then we've got Ryder's kind of turbulence kind of relationship with her own daughter, played by Ortega, and they have this, and there's obviously that sort of tension there as well. So it is kind of like a family generation main story arc as well. That's obviously been brought forward because of a death in the family, that side of things as well. But yeah, the interesting thing is, I think one thing about this film is there's a lot. I think because even though we got all these great characters back, I think it does kind of go all around the place a little bit because everyone has their own like storyline and their own plot line that needs to be kind of tied into other characters eventually. So, for example, we've got Lydia who's try to reconcile with her daughter, trying to kind of come to terms with the death of a family member, that sort of stuff. But then she's also seeing Beetlejuice. She's seeing Beetlejuice in her everyday life still, and she's sensing there's problems going on. And then we've got Jenna Ortega's character who's trying to kind of accept I don't know, trying to kind of find her way in the family. She doesn't. It's obviously she's not the biggest fan of her mum. Obviously, her mum can see the dead. She can't. She's just think it's all a whole lot of bollocks, to be perfectly honest, that sort of thing. So it's kind of I think, and then in the story beats, you kind of know eventually she is going to understand what her mum can do, and I think everyone kind of sees it coming up. Oh yeah, she can eventually, like mother, like daughter, she'll be able to talk to ghosts, that side of things as well. And then on the other side, you've got Beetlejuice, just obviously trying to find a way back up to find Lydia, but also dealing with this psycho ex played by Bellucci, who's just drifting about, and I'm going to probably touch on that a lot more in the spoiler portion because to me, coming out of it, I think that character in particular is very wasted. That's me. I don't know how you feel about that, Harriet. So we got that, and then yeah, it's like it links into things like Willem Dafoe. Willem Dafoe, might I add, is probably the MVP of this.
Yes, I totally agree.
Willem Dafoe is clearly having the time of his life playing. So basically, his character is an actor who is very method actor. He likes things to be real. He's died on the set of one of his detective movies. He's been blown up by I think he's been blown up by a grenade or a mine to say, no, I want realism, that sort of things. And basically, he's not really a cop, but he's an actor who thinks he's a cop, who's actually now a cop in the undead world. And he's basically he's treating every moment like investigations and all that sort of stuff as proper. Oh, right, this is the scene. I'm gonna interrogate this person. We're gonna find the bad guys and we're gonna save the day. And someone get me coffee. The amount of coffee he gets handed in this film is brilliant.
And the amount he wastes as well. He doesn't drink it.
Yes, it's not a spoiler. That it's just
No.
it's just the running gag that just basically says, oh, hi Willem Dafoe. Hey, oh, here, have a coffee. Oh, thank you. All right, let's go after these bad guys. That sort of side of things. Yeah, so Willem Dafoe, I think, is clearly having the time of his life there. But going back to my point, I think there's a lot of interesting characters here. They all kind of, I feel to a point, some characters have purpose and some characters have a gradual step forward in the story. Some characters feel like they are just wedged in for the sake of being wedged in. And yes, it all comes together in a finale. Most of it works, and some of it's kind of going, okay, we've spent this time going here, and it just feels, It's hard to properly describe without going into spoilers. Don't worry, we are going to talk about spoilers, but there's a lot of potential. There's some really good stuff in there. There is definitely some good stuff in here. I feel that there is probably a little bit of things they could have probably trimmed or not necessarily spent too much time with, and I think you would have had probably a tighter, more satisfactory film, I think, for a general audience. I think for the fans, I think you're just going to lap everything up, and that's absolutely fine. Yeah, that's my sort of general thought on the film. Harriet, what are your general thoughts overall with the film from a non-spoiler perspective?
I have to agree in regards to Dolores. Her character was wasted, I have to say. She had so much potential, and it was just like, okay. Again, not going into spoiler territory yet, but we will talk more into that. Yeah, I am a fan of both of the movie and the cartoon, because growing up I loved the spooky stuff, so I embraced all of that. I have not seen the musical. I really want to, but like I said, I've seen the cartoons. But it's interesting how there was, like I said, there was a lot of stories on here, and I actually made bullet points of how many there were in this story. But like you said, it did kind of marry up at the end.
Yeah, you said just before we started recording, you said you had 2 pages worth of like plot points. It's like, okay, that's a lot of things going on. Obviously, lots of things go on in a film, but there's like everyone, like I said, everyone has their own sort of purpose, or kind of have their own little mini story. And it's kind of like, if it all ties together like comfortably, if it all flows together naturally, it feels like a natural route forward. You go, oh yeah, that makes sense. Some, like I said, some work, and some are just basically like, oh, well, we're here, now they're there. But no, they're there now. All right. In that sort of way.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, in terms of other characters, I like Justin Theroux as the slimy partner and producer of Lydia. It's like the moment the moment he appears on screen, you know he's not, he doesn't feel genuine. You know he's only in it for fame and fortune, or just basically trying to protect the star, because Lydia at the start of the film is a successful TV star of ghostly things, aka something like a Ghost Dimensions. Now, if you want to discover that, come over to my streams on twitch.tv/the Dekker Dane, but we're not going to dive into that just now. But yeah, so she's the host of this ghost. She's made her name being like this ghost, most haunted presenter per se, and he's clearly riding the coattails. And basically, he's finding any particular way to kind of stay. I mean, it's not like, oh, there's not a moment in the film where you think, oh, he feels like a genuine guy. It's like, no, he's an utter twat, and I don't like him. And you're not supposed to like him. And it's like he's going to get his comeuppance sooner or later. That side of things. I mean, Gina Ortega, absolutely fine in this. Blends into like the gothic. I think she's kind of built the niche in like horror gothic stuff at the moment. Obviously, there's the Scream and Scream 6 double bill. There's Wednesday as well. She's been Wednesday Addams in Netflix's drama. So she's kind of really comfortable in this sort of horror environment. So yeah, absolutely fine. I have no qualms about her in this film. It just seems very natural. It seems like a very natural fit. Any thoughts on the cast?
I have to agree with Justin Theroux. It was, when you've done your job when you do not like that character. I did
Mm,
not like him at all, pretty much
mm.
from the beginning. Yeah, we will talk about why, but also, yeah, like Jenny, like you said, it's the trope she has. I think there was something online like her top 10 things, and straight away she is more to like the horror or like genre at the moment. Like you said, Scream, Wednesday, which I have not seen yet, but I've heard she's
Nor have
really
I.
good in that. But apparently she was in like a horror movie years ago as a child, so she is
Oh,
used to this now sort of thing. I don't know the name off the hand, but yeah, so this is very much her thing. I kind of, it's great casting actually, because if you have, because people kind of called her like a Winona Ryder, so why not capitalize on that and have her in the movie as Winona Ryder's daughter, which works really well, and it did, because they
yeah,
did work great together, even though they did not like each other, but still it flowed really well. There wasn't a case of like hostility, like, or thinking like, no, this doesn't work. It really did work really well. It was nice to see a lot of the old cast back as well. I love Catherine O'Hara, so it was just lovely to see her back. It's just as crazy
yeah.
as ever.
There's there's an interesting kind of change in tune for like Catherine O'Hara, because obviously she starts the film off as a widower. We'll talk a little bit more about why the father of the family is no longer in the film in the spoiler territory side of things. But she's, because in the original film she's very kind of, she's kind of like the Justin Theroux character way. She's just, she isn't pleasant. She seems like she doesn't understand, and she doesn't kind of click with Lydia in any shape or form. It's just through happenstance that they just seem to bond. Whereas here there seems to be a better kind of relationship. It's not perfect, but they seem to be on better speaking grounds. I like the fact that they've developed like Catherine O'Hara's like artist character further. So basically, she's got proper shows.
Yeah.
She's really going into experimental stuff per se, and yeah, it's nice that for the characters that have come back. It's nice that they've tried to expand it out a bit. I would probably say out of the characters, Beetlejuice probably isn't the one that's expanded a lot on. It's more or less Beetlejuice again, with a little cravat of the Monica Bellucci character, which is just attacked on. Oh, let's just put it on here, and it's like, I think there's actually a little reference to his past in the first film, which does play into this one, but it's such a small throwaway line. It's just kind of like, oh well, we need to give Beetlejuice a story. Ah, that'll do, in that sort of way. But we'll dive on that on spoilers. And yeah, I kind of, like I said earlier, I really like the expanded look at the undead world. You see things like the Soul Train, which was really, really well put together. It's their way of basically people going on to heaven, or there's always people who can go to hell, that sort of way. But it's just kind of where it's like the Soul Train sounds exactly as you expect it to be. It's basically soul music, and basically it's get on this train, we're going to boogie to heaven. It's gonna be
I love
fun.
it. It's the best.
the, and that is the art direction and the visuals for the underworld bit are so good now. I'm kind of going, I kind of wish we spent more time in the underworld, maybe flip it on its head. Obviously, we spent time with ghosts in the original trying to kind of find their way in the limit. Maybe just really flip on its head and kind of, okay, normal people in the underworld. We have that bit as one of like the main sort of propellers in like the film in like the second and third act. But I think we could have spent more time. I think
Mm,
part of me does wish we had a longer stint in the undead world if this was a sequel. I mean,
yes.
as a sequel in itself, it's fine. But maybe if they do go back to the third film, and it's made quite a lot of money in the US box office at the moment. I think it's definitely made over $100 million at the moment. So
Ooh.
it's very profitable at the moment. Um, Maybe if they do a third one, if it doesn't take them another 40 years,
Please don't. I want to live to see the third one.
maybe we can dive a bit more into the undead world. I think, but as it stands, I think considering when you do these sort of legacy sequels, it's you have sometimes, and I think I've spoke about this on previous reviews and all that sort of stuff on like old podcasts. But when you do a legacy sequel, you either bash things into the ground that it's not really that interesting anymore. It's just basically, hey, remember this bit? Remember this bit? Remember this bit? Remember this bit? Do you remember what we did here before? You remember this? It's like if you go back to some of the Star Wars. It's like Star Wars, say, like Force Awakens. It's like, you remember Han Solo, you remember Chewie, you remember C-3PO, it's all this stuff. You remember all that. We're going to kind of do the first film again, but just slightly different. But, you remember that sort of stuff. And then you look at some more of the different legacy sequels. I mean, a good example would be Bad Boys 3. And it's a weird change of direction here, but hear me out. The thing with Bad Boys 3 is with Martin Lawrence and Will Smith, they come in and they kind of respect the fact that they are older. It's been like a decade plus since they did the film Bad Boys 2 Between. So they kind of play to that. And I think a good legacy sequel is when you kind of play to the fact that there's a bit of mortality going on there. And they do that here with Beetlejuice. But there are other films there that just kind of just go, oh yeah, it's like nothing's ever changed. It's everything's back to normal. Yeah. And that sometimes puts you off legacy sequels. I don't think Beetlejuice is this. I think it's a worthy follow-on. And I think that's probably the highest compliment I'm going to give it. Really. It's a worthy follow-on. It's like it does a lot of things right. Some things it falters at, but at the end of the day, I didn't regret spending my time on that.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's one of those movies with a legacy, with a continuation, you have that fear of,
Mm,
will it be good?
yeah.
I have not seen Bad Boys 3 yet, so I can't really compare.
I haven't seen Bad
But
Boys 4, but
yeah. So going into this, I was thinking, just please be good, please be good, please be good. But I had a good feeling it was going to be because if the actors are, it's always that thing when when you know that the actors are having fun, especially in interviews, it's kind of, oh, this seems good. So
yeah.
for a lot of the actors who did come back, and like you said, Beetlejuice was kind of one of those people who kind of stuck the same, but he kind of needed to be the same. I think if he got any
Yeah.
crazier, it'd be like a bit OTT. But this is like perfect for Michael Keaton, and I think this is my favorite, as well as Batman. The Beetlejuice role from Michael Keaton is one of my favorite roles he's played, and I have seen a lot of his movies, but Beetlejuice is always the one that's always there with me because it's just absolutely crazy. But yes, I have a feeling. You said it's like how much it's got in the box office. I have a feeling they probably will make a third movie, and the way it kind of, don't go to spoiler territory, but the way it ended, it could, if that makes sense. And
Mm,
even Tim Burton said, "Give it another 30 years, I could probably direct another one." I was like, "No, please
no.
don't. No, stay alive, please. We want a
10,
third
10
one. We
years,
really
10
would."
year, 10 years is fine. 15 years, fine. I don't think we can handle another 30, 40 years. If you're going to do this, if you're going to do a third one, Tim, do it before. I'm pretty certain Michael Keaton might not be around by that time.
How old is Michael Keaton?
To the internet, quickly. Hang on, caller. He is currently. Why do I say he is currently? How do you be? You are currently. He was born in 1951, so he's a couple of years older than my dad. So he's in his 70s.
Yeah. Okay. So please make it in 10. Oh God, if it's not in 10 years, he'd be in this. Oh jeez, he'd be in his
I
80s.
mean, he didn't look it in the film. I'll tell you that now. That's a good compliment. He didn't look old
Oh,
in. He didn't look older in the film, which is good. So yeah,
Catherine O'Hara
yeah.
didn't either. To be fair, she
No,
looked exactly the same.
yeah, pretty much. Anyway, let's do, before we dive into spoilers, let's do a final rating. Let's do final thoughts and a star rating. So what we do is, depending on the number of people who are reviewing the film here on the show, we take the aggregate score. So, for example, if I say 3 and Harriet says 4, it's going to be 3.5. Yeah, so for me, I think it's a solid sequel. I went in with low expectations. There was nice joy seeing Keaton and Ryder kind of work together again. It was really nice. And the universe going back into the undead world was really, really cool. I generally do think it's down to how you have engaged with Beetlejuice before. If you're a fan of the first film, if you're a fan of the franchise in general, you are going to enjoy this. You will have some fun with this. If not, this isn't going to change your mind in any shape or form. And I think basically, yeah, it's a nice continuation. Some things are the same, some things are quite nice, and some things don't necessarily work. And I think at most, I like the film. I don't love the film. So at a push, I'm gonna say 3.5 out of 5 for me. Harriet.
Yeah, I think if you are a fan of the film, you will enjoy this. There is a lot that happens in it compared to the first film, so it's very busy. Like you said, it's great that they expanded on the underworld and it makes you crave to see more of it. There are some plots that kind of shouldn't be there, which could have been left off without, but obviously they added on because plot. Um I think, yes, you should see the first one before you see this one, because, like I said, it will give you more of information going forward and gives you ideas of stuff that will happen. The actors work very well all together. It's great. And for me, yeah, it's as a fan, I've really enjoyed it, and I probably will watch it again very soon as a double, probably for Halloween or something, depending on when it's released. So again, it's not as good as the original, but like yourself, I think I wish I could give it 4, but because of how much of there is in it and how much to digest in the small amount of time, I think 3.5 from me as well.
So there you have it. Beetlejuice Beetlejuice gets 3.5 stars here on BunkaMania Goes to the Movies. That's the non-spoiler stuff out of the way. Want to know a bit more about the film? Stick around. It's time for spoilers. Right, we can talk about some spoilers. So let's go back to talk about Monica Bellucci's character. She
Yes.
is Beetlejuice's ex. We have a backstory that Beetlejuice used to be a grave robber. He mentioned it in the original film, so it kind of, and he survived the plague around this time. So he is a grave robber during the plague, and basically meets Monica Bellucci's character, who happens to be a soul-sucking demon and just likes to marry men, take the soul out of them, and then carry on. And basically, when Beetlejuice discovers this one, he takes a big axe to her body, and basically she's in pieces. Pieces. It's. I love the fact that the sequence, this whole like flashback sequence, is done in Italian horror.
Yes,
With
yes.
subtitles,
Sorry,
it's
I'm
like
glad you got it as well.
It's like settling cinema fans were going to go old school on this, and I like that. Again, it's a nice little twist, a nice little like visual touch I like on the film. And then yeah, you got Bellucci coming back. I think the sequence she comes back is both entertaining and for me very squirm-inducing, because I did not in any shape or form like the stapling of a body back together. However kooky and fun it was.
And we're
It's like
wrestling fans as well. We should be
it's
used to this.
no, it's seen certain limbs attach, and you don't necessarily see the details of like where the cuts have made, or you see like the injury detail, but it's like, yeah, I squirmed when I saw legs without. I saw like just thighs with no legs, and basically, oh no, this is, and just the notion of things being kind of, it's like you, if you're watching the video version, you're seeing me squirm in my seat. I do
You're
not like it in
literally
the
like
slightest.
that.
I do not like it in the slightest.
Oh,
Um,
bless.
and basically, Monica Bellucci's character's plot, is it Dolores? That's her character's name, isn't it?
Dolores, yeah.
Dolores. So her basic plot in this entire film is to find Beetlejuice and get that soul that she has desperately wanted. So yeah, she's just floating around in the background. She's taking souls left, right, and center, inconsequential characters, give or take. And then towards the end, she turns up, and within 1 minute, she's eaten by a sandworm. And it's like, great.
Bye, Dolores.
Thank you for coming, Monica. Why do we bother? I just feel like this is an afterthought character. In the trailer and throughout like the first half of the film, you're given this big kind of foreboding warning that she means trouble. She means the kind of really cause chaos. And all she does is just kind of go, ooh, ooh. And then it's like, I've come to get you, Beetlejuice. Oh, look, sandworm. And and that's what I've just said a few moments ago. But that is the character plot in this film for a character. And it's stupid. It's stupid, especially when you build up a character this intimidating. I mean, bless poor Danny DeVito as the cleaner who dies first.
Oh.
Wonderful appearance by Danny DeVito, just as a cleaner who's clearly drinking too much bleach. Yeah, it's I mean, it's like, yeah, you make her a big threat. You make her a big threat. You got Beetlejuice worried. You've got his little friend of shrunken head office workers scared as well. The shrunken head office guys
Bob.
are adorable, especially Bob.
Oh.
It's like, you can hardly tell Bob is Beetlejuice in this, and he's little. It's like, fake Beetlejuice. I've got a small head. And it's like, but yeah, it's like, I think that's when it's frustrating. You've built up this character. You've built up this character to be the big bad, and they are thrown away within, yeah, a couple of minutes. A couple of minutes of their paths
Yeah,
crossing. It's like, oh, suddenly sandworm. Why not? Because basically they're just going to go, oh, she's evil. Justin Theroux's character is a bit of a dickhead. Slap them together. Sandworm. Everyone lives happily ever after. Per se, I don't know, but
pretty much.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's frustrating.
Yeah, it's it was kind of this is what I meant about how busy this movie was. It was just kind
Mm.
of so many things were happening, and she was literally Scooby Dooing, running around the corridors, going back and forth.
Doot, 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 woo.
Literally, I was just in my head thinking, "Am I watching Scooby Doo or am I watching Beetlejuice?" One of the other.
Yoinks!
I was expecting Shaggy to come around at some point, and I don't know where I
Oh,
was that.
poor Matthew Lillard. He's still doing Shaggy. He's still good. He
Yeah,
can still
true.
boy just throw a wig and the thing. He goes like zoinks, man! It's like Monica Lewinsky. Oh dear.
It was just I wish there was more to her. I mean, obviously the beginning was cool, obviously with
Mm.
I will admit the whole thing with the tragedy song in the background while she was
Oh
stapling
yeah.
herself together, I found flipping hilarious, I'm not gonna lie. And then, poor Danny DeVito, as you said. Then the whole storyline of like, okay, now she's getting the wedding dress. She's turned it black. Now we see she wants to get married to married to Beetlejuice again. And then when you saw the backstory to Beetlejuice, I was like, okay, so this story is going somewhere. And it's just pretty much her still walking around like literally, and I was just like, where is this going? And I was so disappointed because she was a cool character. She was
Yeah.
literally like the succubus, like wanting to kill men or
You're,
whatever. It was just
you're, you're,
like,
you're, ex- you're expecting this evil villain spiel at some point. She hasn't said much in this entire film except where is Beetlejuice? And you get to this point, you think, oh, she's gonna have a big monologue of how Beetlejuice actually broke her heart, and maybe there's a twist. Maybe Beetlejuice is still a massive dick in this sort of situation. Maybe Beetlejuice could be lying because
yeah,
he's been lying a lot, and you could have nice twists there. But no, she just floats on by, goes woo, and that's about it.
and as you said,
And just a big intake of breath of, and it's like, great. I mean, this is the
next.
thing. You could probably flesh that out to be your second half of the movie. In theory, basically,
Mm,
this is a potential. It's its own self-contained story in a franchise.
yeah,
It's the same as the Arthur Conti's character, the teenage love interest for Jenna Ortega, who, spoiler, turns out to be dead because just before she
yeah.
meets him for the first time, she bumps her head, and lo and behold, it's like, oh hello, I'm in a treehouse and I can't really go much. My parents, I need to stay and look after my parents. We discover he's actually a serial killer who's killed his parents and basically has hatched an evil plot to try and swap souls with Jenna Ortega's character. Again, this is a story that I did kind of like, and I did sense something was amiss with this character to begin with. So it's just like, I don't know if it was
Yes.
the parents or it was him per se. And it only kind of clicked together as like, oh, he's James. Oh no, he's evil.
I was gonna say, the first thing I noticed is when she hit the fence, and the first thing he said to her was, "Oh, don't worry, my parents won't notice that." And suddenly I was just like, "Uh-oh. Oh no." The
Yeah.
red flag kind of popped up in my head. I was just like, "I'm keeping an eye on you. I don't trust you." And even then when you saw the parents, you didn't see them per se. You just saw like the back of them, like dad was
Yeah.
watching TV, mum was baking, and I was just thinking, "Mm, mm-mm, I still don't trust you." And then I saw the book and I was like, "Oh no."
Yeah. And it's like, I think again, that own self-contained story again is a story that could be fleshed out a lot more. It's kind of crammed as like subplot C against Bellucci in subplot B per se. I guess it's kind of like
Yeah.
one of these two storylines probably would make a good second half to this movie. Whereas we've gotten together, it's still okay, but it just feels like we're just kind of going off on different directions per se. And it's like,
Mm.
okay, how? I mean, okay, I guess I understand. Maybe that's the Jenna Ortega storyline of going with evil dead serial killer teenage boy is the catalyst that takes Lydia back into the underworld per se and gets her to link up with Beetlejuice. And again, you could do that and not have Monica Bellucci's character. Again, it's like
Mm.
you could have a second half of itself of an uneasy alliance, which ultimately does turn back to normal. It's like Beetlejuice does attempt to once again try and marry Winona Ryder, doesn't pan out again, per se. And it's just like it's just overstuffed, and that's frustrating there. I think you should have picked one of these two storylines and you should have run with it and then add in the extra little bits. You could still have Willem Dafoe's detective. I think regardless of the situation, Willem Dafoe's character was absolutely fine in the film. You could still
Yeah.
have the Justin Theroux sly thing. You can still have Catherine Hara accidentally getting herself snake bitten to death in a graveyard. It's like that happened, and I went, "Really?"
Yeah. It's just like, "Oh,
It's
dear."
like it's like, oh, it's like, okay, everything happens at the church at the end. So there's yeah, the big set piece happens in a church in the village. And you kind of think, oh, maybe she's just going to hang out there, and eventually she'll just get involved at some point. No, no, no. She has these snakes that she claims are defanged from the internet, and within just opening was like, oh, I've been bitten twice in the neck. Oh, I'm dead. And again, it's like on one side I find it funny because it's like, oh, you silly person, and the other side is like, really,
I mean,
really.
yeah. Quick and painless, I suppose, you
Yeah,
know?
I suppose. I mean, the one thing we haven't touched upon is the the father of the family is not in this film in shape or form, and that was
Charles.
like, Charles Deeds, who was played by Jeffrey Jones in the first film. Jones clearly isn't back because of a criminal conviction in 2003. I'm not going to go into details about it. You could look them up. Um, there is a damn good reason why he's not back in this film. It's a bit where they sort of use his likeness in like a flashback animation, which is done
Yes.
in this kind of style. It's like a bright, colorful style of like Night Before Christmas. So basically, the character has been written out by surviving a plane crash and then getting his head and most of his torso ripped out by a shark. So he's
Yep.
basically just hanging around the underworld, just blood splurting out, limbs and organs all out of the place. Again, kind of hideous, and to me, the kind of I'm going to touch on that a little bit in a second because there's another aspect of this film that I'm a little bit perplexed about, but I kind of also understand. But no, I think the it's just I think just for the benefit of our listeners who are still probably wondering, well, why wasn't the father properly in this? There are reasons, and I think the film kind of dealt with them the best they could in that situation.
Yeah.
You either completely don't have the character at all, or you make him a kind of like, okay, there's a voice impersonator that does his voice occasionally, but mostly he's just a silent, headless, dead man wandering around the underworld
Very
per
much,
se.
yeah.
Yeah. Um. So yeah. So there's that. The characters played by Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis aren't back in it either. There's no cameos. They're referenced, but again, I kind of understand from Alec Baldwin position why he's probably not been invited back. I'm not sure about Gina Davis in that sort of way.
Mm.
But yeah, it's like, okay, I think having those two characters back probably would have been a bit overkill. But I think they just kind of comfortably said, we've let them move on. It's like, great, okay, that's fine in that sort of way.
Yeah. It's kind of, that was one of the things I wanted to touch upon in regards
Mm,
to how I was thinking, would they make some appearance? But also, you're right. I think if they did, this film was busy enough as it was, but I did
Yeah.
like the fact actually, we need to touch upon the opening as well, how that was very much referenced, like, from the original film, but it was in real life, and I
Oh
was
yeah.
thinking, "Is this, like, the model kit?" Which is really
Yeah.
cool. But
Mm.
obviously the story is that through to a loophole, they are now no longer in the house, and I was just like, "That's very convenient," but also I can completely understand why.
Oh, they got on the
But
Soul
to
Train.
Astra's point of view, it's just like, yeah, exactly, the Soul Train. But I was wondering if they would make a feature. Obviously, the shop he used to own is now a coffee shop in the town, I did notice, because
Hmm.
why not? Coffee shop. So,
Mm.
but yeah, it's kind of I'm glad they did not feature because I think their story has come and gone. I think it was good to kind of we had enough undead people in this as well to kind of marry on with this and keep the story going. So in a way, it was probably good. Yeah, in regards to Charles, I will put my hand on my heart. I did not know. I had to actually look up after. I was just thinking, why is it in this movie? I'm not going to touch upon it, but it was just like I understand why they did it. It was very clever how they did it with the stop motion, and it was very Tim Burton-esque,
Mm.
as you said, like Nightmare Before Christmas, and then literally him just wandering around, just like, yeah. When I first saw him turn up in the underworld, I was just like, oh my god, they done it, and it was just like gruesome, but very cool. It was just like, yeah, this is the
Mm.
Beetlejuice I remember. It was kind of like creepy.
Mm. And it kind of leads me on to this is my kind of my last major kind of thought in the spoiler territory side of things. It's basically this film for because we've watched it in the UK for listeners and viewers. The film I believe is probably PG-13 in America. Here it's 12A. That means kids under 12 can see it with their parents. The original is a 15. I think it is still a 15 on DVD, Blu-ray, and whatever. So I'm quite surprised this is a 12A, to be perfectly honest, based on kind of
Yes.
some of the horror gore aspect of it, because blood is splurting at times. There are people who have clearly died some very gruesome deaths in it, and the way I looked at it and I kind of okay, I can kind of see one argument is basically the violence is it's horror comedy cartoon style violence. It's very Looney Tunes. These characters are already dead. They're not really suffering in any shape or form. It's basically they're already dead, and whatever happens, they're just kind of going, "Oh well, this is a bit of an inconvenience," and it's done for jokes. I think if you were showing people still in pain, so you had ghosts going, "Oh, I'm in pain," or like terrified screaming, all that sort of stuff, I can probably see why you might rate this higher. And again, it's like the gruesome, some of the lightly gruesome aspects. Monica Bellucci stapling herself back together, um, and yeah, it's like I I wouldn't say this is a kids' film. I mean, the screen I went to, there was a family I went to see it. They seemed to enjoy it. That was all fine. I mean, if the kids
Mm.
can handle it, great, fine. I'm not there to judge. I think it's just shooting this notion that Beetlejuice. The thing is, sometimes with a 12A film, if it's attached with certain films, you get the impression, oh, it's suitable for kids. It's not really, and I don't think Beetlejuice was never kind of intended for like young families. I think it's intended for obviously slightly older families and those who remember the film. And I don't think it's a deal breaker. I mean, it's like I found it just surprising it's a 12A, especially towards the end. So the end sequence, we've got Lydia Dietz kind of imagining what a future will be like, sort of
Oh.
reconnected with her daughter, and Jenna Ortega meets this beautiful Italian boy on holiday who's dressed up as Dracula. You see them get married. You see them about to welcome a child into the world. And that child turns out to be an evil baby version of Beetlejuice who just happily rips the throats out of the doctors, starts crawling up the walls and going, Mama. And it's like, again, I look at that and go, that's not a 12A. That's scary.
No.
I can imagine that being quite traumatizing for some kids. But again, it's just my thought on it, really.
Your moment of the staples, this was my moment. Of me going, "Oh, I don't like this, that," oh, especially from a female perspective of just like, "Oh, a natural, thing of giving birth." Oh dear, right, that child is demonic and,
Yes.
no. Because we obviously saw the baby earlier on in the film, very briefly, and I was just
Yeah.
like, "Oh, we'll never see it again." Oh boy, I was wrong. I didn't want to be wrong. I loved at the end, like, Astrid was just like, "Oh," and then obviously it was the whole surprise, it was a dream sequence. It's
The
just like,
Beetlejuice might still be
"Oh god."
lurking. He is kind of still lurking, to be honest. You get that impression that he's still lurking
Yeah.
in the background per se. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think it's a necessarily a deal breaker per se. It's a 12A, but it definitely doesn't feel like a 12A. It feels still like it's old Beetlejuice sort of stuff. I do find there, because in 12As you allow one use of the F word, their use got bleeped. And I think it was done for comedy effect, which I was kind of going, huh? What? It's like I was waiting for the F bomb to drop in the finale, and then it's just like, what the bleep? It's like, oh, all right. But I think I found it funny it bleeped, to be perfectly honest. Yeah, yeah. I think if you're a watcher or a listener of the show and you're pondering about um taking your kids to see, or even letting your kids see this, BBFC are really, really good on the website and kind of highlighting some key bits, and they kind of highlight some things you need to be aware of. So check out the website. It's really, really kind of detailed and informative, really. But yeah, it's like the original didn't drop down in rating from 15, and I feel I think some of the verbal humor is probably a little bit more crass in the original. And this one, it's not necessarily as bad. But when you're kind of suggesting that certain characters are cold-blooded murderers, like the teenage ghost boy, um, it's like it's not a bright. I wouldn't say it's a bright color. It's very bright and colorful, but I wouldn't say it's bright and colorful. It's a happy sequel because there's still death. There's still a lot of undead stuff going on around. But that's just me. That's just me. Any final kind of spoilery things you want to touch on? The only other thing I have on was the lovely ode to Deo at the funeral with the choir singing Deo.
I think I have to talk about Justin Theroux's character and especially the proposal at the funeral.
Oh God,
Oh god.
God! It's
I
like don't. It's like when he started doing his little thing. Is I'm gonna make a big thing. I'm gonna propose. It's like no, don't, not at a funeral. That is the worst time you could possibly. It's like any time when someone has an important life event happening, whether they're getting married, they're having a christening, or something like that.
Mhm.
You don't usurp it for your own selfish means, which just proves it's like, I know your father's dead, Lydia, but how about we get married? Like on Sunday, because Sunday's Halloween, because, it's your favorite holiday. I can get a wedding dress shipped over from London. It'll be fine.
Oh god, it's like I love reading Reddit stories of, like, stuff like that happening, but that happened at the funeral is definitely something, I'm not gonna lie, and even
Yes.
it's like you said, at significant events, taking the moment away, and I hate it because it's just like, "Well, this is for this person," but obviously, I've never heard it happen to a funeral, and even then, I was just like, I wrote in my notes here, internally screaming, because that's what I was doing. I was just squirming. I was just like,
it's
it's like
it's just other little bits. It's other bits that Farou's character dives into a
mm.
bit. It's like when they're driving over to pick up they're driving over to pick up John Ortega's character. And he's going, it's like, I had a loss in the family recently. It was my grandma. She died about 40 years ago, but it's okay. I think I can channel that energy into explaining the death of a parental to a child. And it's like, no. I think if I was any sensible parent and there was a death in the family, I think I would be the one to tell my child, not the random greasy-haired producer who's giving me pills all the time.
Oh, that was yeah, but like I said earlier, he played a good character when you hated him, and by the end of the movie, when the sandworm got him, I was just like, "Okay, I'm happy now."
Yeah, I think overall, like I said, I think Beetlejuice is a very good sequel. It's entertaining. I wasn't bored by it. I think some things could have been done a bit differently. And I think those two kind of competing storylines of Bellucci and the teenage ghost boy serial killer, they either needed to be by themselves or it needed to work a bit sooner because it was like it only kind of kicked into gear towards the end of second act into third act. By the time we get to the third act, everything's just started to go wrong per se. So it did take its time to get there as well, which I felt was a bit frustrating. It's about an hour and 45, hour and 40. It's about,
Yeah.
I think, 15, 20 minutes longer than the previous one.
Yes.
So yeah, it's like the original is very tightly paced and really, really good. And yeah, this one is like, yes, it's still paced okay, but you start noticing when things seem a bit too this is going on a bit, per se. But yeah, I think 3.5 stars is still I think it's the right score for it. I think it's the right score for it.
Like you said, it was maybe if it had more time, I don't know, but obviously the first film was enough. Second film, yeah, I think it was enough, but like you said, I think if they just focused on one more than the other, it probably would have got like a 4-star rating from me, but because everything was kind of rushed at the end, and even at the wedding it was just kind of like that was thrown together pretty much at the very end, and it was yeah, I very busy, very rushed, but it kind of wrapped up everything, which is what you really wanted, to be fair.
Well, there we go. That's a spoiler talk on Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. Let us know your thoughts on the film. If you're watching on YouTube, let us know your thoughts in the comments. Or if you're listening on audio and want to fling over an email, you can contact us at contact@BunkaMania.com. And that is going to bring this episode of BunkaMania Goes to the Movies to the end. Thank you so much for joining us. Hope you enjoyed the show. In terms of movie content coming up here soon, I think we've got our first... Well, I wouldn't say first, but it's kind of like our restart of our special monthly look at a movie with a wrestler in it. And I believe both myself and Harriet will be here very soon to talk about The Chaperone with Triple H. Good old head of creative of WWE right now, being a chaperone for his kid. And Lisa Simpson's in it. I don't know how. But it's a thing. You'll find out. If you want to find out when the episode goes live, follow us on YouTube, follow us on your podcast provider of choice. We'd love to bring you more episodes in the near future. And before we go, Harriet, where can they follow you on social media and engage in some of your own content as well?
You can find me on Twitter at MangaGirl232. I also stream once a week on Twitch at under Harriet_MangaGirl. I kind of switch between gaming and watch-alongs, and also on YouTube. It's going to be a bit quiet now for now, reaction-wise. I will try and probably pull up highlights of my streams per se. There is one I played recently called Thank Goodness You're Here. There is a lot of worthy clips I could probably put on and that's at MangaGirl232. But on Twitter I post my links and everything what I'm doing that week, so that's the best way to follow me.
Awesome stuff. And you can also follow me on Twitch at the Dekker Dane. I stream Mondays 8 o'clock UK time. We dive into the wacky world of animation on YouTube, as well as old classic TV shows, as well as Ghost Dimensions, which is basically what I felt watching Lydia's TV show at the start of the film. Was basically, it's like, oh, we've taken the hidden cameras in it. We found ghosts. It's like, oh god, it's Ghost Dimensions all over again. If you want to find out what that means, join us during the Halloween month of October over on the channel. There is plenty of other BunkaMania content available on our channel as well. On BunkaMania UK, we also have a wrestling podcast, BunkaMania Wrestling, and there's been so much wrestling over the last couple of weeks. We talk about All In, All Out, and even Bash at Berlin. So if you want to catch up on those episodes, head on over to BunkaMania UK on YouTube, or look up for BunkaMania Wrestling on your podcast provider of choice. But until then, I have been the Dekker Dane. I have been joined by Harriet, aka Manga Girl. And until next time, we will see you very, very soon. This has been BunkaMania. BunkaMania Goes to the Movies. Goodbye.